Hey there, listeners. This episode was recorded before the COVID-19 pandemic. If you're stuck at home, as we now are, we're glad we can keep you company. Stay safe.
Why don't you write when you don't need money, honey? That would certainly make a hit.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Word Docs. I'm Sean. I'm sitting here with Alex and Amy, and we're here to discuss all things literary from the perspective of creative writers who work for a university.
Hi, welcome back.
Hi.
So what are we talking about this week?
Today we're going to talk about our writing environments, and the reason why we've chosen this is because here in Adelaide, currently at the moment, it's somewhere around the 40-degree mark, which is unbearable.
And then
for
it's going to be
like
41, 44, and I believe this week may be the hottest week in Australian history on record, right? Maybe.
Could possibly be.
Let's just commit to that.
Yeah.
It might not be true,
I
but
think
we'll just
it's
commit
true,
to that.
though. It might not be. It might be fake news. Feels true. It feels really hot.
We're writers. Our job is to turn the colour up on everyday life to make it more interesting. So this week is now the hottest record in history in the entire planet, which is why my brain is not working. I am not designed to function in
Sean's
hot weather.
really not designed to function in hot weather. He where would you rather be right now?
Back in Antarctica, my favourite place in the whole world.
So let's start there. That's your ideal.
First of all, let's tell everyone why you've been in Antarctica, because most people, you've been in Antarctica, Alex.
No,
I can't
say
me
I
neither.
have.
So tell us the story of Antarctica.
Oh, well, thank you for asking, Amy. Now I get to brag, which is what writers love to do most. I was the Australian Antarctic Division Antarctic Arts Fellow for 2017, so I was flown down to Casey Research Station for a while to research a novel, which I'm still writing. And down there I discovered that it was my favourite place in the entire world because it's cold and the air is extremely dry. It's the driest place on Earth because there's no liquid water, naturally.
So do you have to take moisturiser? Like lots
a lot
of
of
moisturiser?
people really suffer from dry skin, but I have a naturally horribly greasy skin, so this air is actually really great for me. That's why I like living in Adelaide, because it's really dry here too.
I love that you said that with such a smile too.
Yeah. Could you hear it dripping off my face? But the other thing I loved about Antarctica is the habitats you live in are kept at a constant 19 degrees, and 19 degrees is deliciously balmy.
That is a long way to go for 19 degrees in Antarctica.
It is. You could just get a really good air conditioner and,
Or go somewhere like with a moderate climate.
Well, like Dublin, where I lived for a little while too. So Dublin's 19's a warm day.
So how long had that, you said that you were the, 2017 fellow. How long has that been going on for?
Oh, it's been going on since the 70s, I think, or the early 80s.
Right.
So every year they send out at least one artist.
And how long do you go for?
It depends. One visual artist was down there for a whole year.
Wow.
I was only there for about a week and a half because that's the way the flights worked out. But I would very much like to go back. Every artist should apply to go down there if they have any interest in living in a beautiful, cool, dry environment.
Do you fly in or do you go by boat?
You would probably normally drive in by ship. You would normally go by boat on the replacement for the Aurora. But I flew in. There's a wonderful blue ice runway near Casey Station at Wilkes Aerodrome. That was amazing. Or was it Wilkins Aerodrome? I forget. But landing in Antarctica, it's like landing on Hoth from the Star Wars universe.
Cool.
It was so fantastic.
Except no one's trying to shoot at you.
That's right. And so that's my favourite environment to work in, dark and cold.
Dark and cold.
You also don't love lots of people either, right? So did you feel claustrophobic with there's so few people and such a small environment, or that's comfortable?
It's quite a big environment down there. I mean, it was full when I was there, which meant there were about 80 people.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah, it's quite, and there's lots of space. So, but you have your own. I had a room to myself. I was concerned that I might be sharing in a room, but thankfully I was not. I had a room to myself, so I could sneak off there. The room had no windows. It was perfect.
Because I think writers, all of us, do like to be left alone a little bit. Like I can't be around people all day, every day.
No.
You'd have to have an hour or so alone.
Yeah. I think I'm getting more introverted as I get older. I used to be really kind of fun. And now I'm grumpy. I think, after a couple of days, I'd go stir crazy if I'm still around people. And I think most people I'm close to understand that when I say I need to go and, go to a writing space or what have you, that it's not actually anything to do with them in a kind of negative way or, and I think that's important because otherwise, I don't know, what do they say? Some people get energy from being around people. Some people draw energy from being alone. I'm kind of both, but if I don't have that alone space, I think I'd go stir crazy. Wouldn't go to Antarctica necessarily. But to a room at the other end of the house, yes.
What does the bedroom look like? Like, what kind of room is it? How big and what?
Well, there's photos on my blog on my website if you want to see a photo
What's
of my
the
little room.
website? Give us the website.
My website, SeanWilliams.com. If you scroll back through the blog page a couple of screens, there's a 7-part mega essay on my trip to Antarctica, and including photos of the various environments you live in, including the bedroom, which has a little sort of print-sized bed that's built in with drawers underneath and a little desk. It's tiny. It's like a little ship's berth.
Yeah, right.
And it's really cozy. I feel very comfortable
Grinning,
there.
but he's so happy.
Is there any sense of day or night?
Well, when I was there, it was the end of summer, so it was nighttime for about 3 hours a day. And because...
Couldn't do that.
Well, we hardly ever saw the night because the sun went down about 1 o'clock in the morning and came up again at 4. So it was just day all the time. But all the windows have blackout curtains and it was cool.
I mean, it kind of feeds into what's the best time of day to be writing, because I'm probably a night writer, not to be confused with Night Rider.
Oh, yeah.
Although I'm going to call myself Night Rider from now on. But I mean, I'm getting better, but weirdly, I sort of start getting active at like 6 o'clock at night.
Right.
And then I go, okay, now I want to stay here for hours and put pots of coffee on. And
I like writing first thing in the morning. I like getting up. But back when I was writing full-time, that was my preferred MO. Get up in the morning, make a cup of hot chocolate, get in my tracky decks, and I'm away. And then if I've written what I need to write by lunchtime, then the rest of the day is mine. It seemed to suit me. Otherwise, I feel guilty all day.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't have the luxury anymore because I've got kids and job, so I can't have a preferred time. I've been all over the place. I am one of those people that can't commit to anything. Like, I can't tell you what time of year is my favourite because I like them all. I like extremes, so I love this hot weather. I'm the opposite to Sean, but I also love it when winter hits, and I like spring and so I like all of it. And I can write in the morning if I have to, but probably my preferences would be early morning and late at night. Not early morning, but first thing when I get up before anything distracts me, or in the evening and then write late. But these days I just have to write whenever I write.
so none of us live the coffee shop writer cliche?
I've never liked that because I'm too distracted by people.
Yeah, I like the idea of it. I have done it, and I usually do it with groups. See, I don't love being alone either. I do like an hour or so a day by myself. But my preferred way of writing would be with at least one other person in the house.
You have a rider cat, though.
I do have a cat.
You've got your rider mascot cat.
My partner has trained the cat to sit next to you.
It has to sit next to them
and it will,
on a cushion.
And it will do laps of the table. She will do laps of the table until you put a chair out next to you.
I want to ride a cat.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of investing in a rider cat.
But I like it if I can hear noise somewhere in the house. I can't write at work. I've tried, and I've made sure I've had quiet offices so that if I have to do something, I can. But I find it just so distracting.
Does that mess with your head? Because that mess with my head. A lot of things mess with my head. But when you're working at a university and you think, I must be here because it's my job. I must be in my office and be Dr. Alex. And yet you actually realise I'm more productive when I'm not here. Because when I'm here, I'm walking around seeing if anyone wants to have a cup of coffee. I think
the admin,
stealing
you do a lot
cheese
of admin.
slices from the staff room.
I think you're also surrounded by all the papers you have to deal with, and there's people stopping by, students stop by. And it's just, in my head, that's a very workspace for teaching, admin, grant applications, all that stuff I can do there. But the writing bit feels kind of like you have to protect it. And
I guess there's different kinds of writing and different kinds of environments.
True.
So I think we've started this podcast, in my head anyway, with the idea of where do we creatively write.
Yes, okay.
And having moved into an office now and to the academic world, I do find that my office at uni is a great place to get all the workplace stuff done.
Absolutely.
It's a great place to respond to all those emails that I've been putting off,
and
or
you're
working
so
on grants
efficient.
and speeches. It's great. I love it. Now that I've got my standing desk, I can be really comfortable at work. But home is where I prefer to do creative
Me too.
work.
I like to be at home. And I think there's something about vulnerability maybe, or getting into I don't know, we talked about it as like an intuitive space or a dream space in one of the other podcasts. Yeah. I think there's a kind of, I feel a bit naked in some way, like emotionally naked or just distracted, or I'd rather be somewhere private. Go somewhere private and do it.
And I have a body memory. Oh, sorry. I was going to say I've got a body memory of when I write creatively, I'm wearing tracky dacks and a daggy old T-shirt. I can't do that at work. Yeah. So if I'm at work and I'm wearing a collar and proper pants and proper shoes.
Posh.
It's too posh. I feel like I'm an imposter of some kind.
I'll tell you what, if I get a bit stressed about a deadline, like if I'm feeling oppressed or worried about it, I often move. So I've written all over my house. I've sat.
From room to room.
Yeah. So I've sat at the kitchen table. The last 2 books, a lot of it was written at the kitchen table. But if I'm feeling really oppressed, I'll go sit in bed. I'll open up the window and I'll just sit in bed and write.
Well, I have this a table in my lounge room now it's a really cheap table from from Audi, and it comes up and it's perfect. And so I get Moscato and a really unhealthy pizza,
Moscato.
and I'll just sit there for hours.
I drink a lot of coffee.
So, it's interesting because I, in some ways, think it might be healthier to go to a coffee shop because then I kind of get up, get out of the house.
Give your liver a break.
Although then I'd be buying lots of coffees because other people can do this. They can go into a coffee shop, then they can have one coffee over an 8-hour period.
No, I
I'd be getting like eggs on toast, baked beans, milkshakes.
I used to have this great writing group years ago, and we found this cafe in the city that's no longer there that had a boardroom attached. It was this long room with a long table, just like a boardroom, which they used to let people use. And they would let us use it on Thursdays. And we'd all go in the morning. And the deal was we'd just have to buy lunch there. So we'd order coffees all day and they'd bring them in. But we'd be locked away in this long room and it didn't have any windows. And we would sit there from like 9 until 12 and just write and then have lunch. And then a couple of people would wander off. And I got a lot done in there.
Yeah.
But there was like a cone of silence. You had to not talk while you're in there.
You can't muck around. But I think there is something to be said for writing with people. And then at lunch you meet and chat about other stuff. I was down at Port Elliot with a playwright friend of mine and we were sharing my parents' house. My parents were away. We didn't talk to each other except for lunch and dinner. We were just in opposite ends of the house doing our thing. But then lunch and dinner was fun. And I kind of thought that in a way it makes sure that you stay on task, but also you kind of draw energy from in those meal times, getting a sense of what the other person's doing and go, they're doing something cool. I'll do something cool. So I think it can be really useful to write with people as long as that silence is understood.
That's the Varuna model, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you either of you done Varuna?
No, because I've
Neither
had kids pretty much my whole writing career. But I have gone on writing retreats with friends just for the weekend down to Aldinga or to a beach somewhere. And they're really good. I've been with different groups of writers, like romance writers, literary writers. And they're fun because you do work all day and then you dinner together and a few drinks. And it's I don't know, you talk the whole time you're there, you're talking about plots and stories and it just gets you really focused, I think. It's a bit of a reward as well for the grind.
Yeah. And it's solidarity and all of that. What do you think about, some people say to me, students sometimes say to me, and we may have touched on this a week or so ago, but on the idea that you can't write unless conditions are perfect. And I kind of go, well, I don't, unless you have this magical day where the sun is exactly right, we're not too hot, not too cold, the light and the shadow is perfect, and we're in the ideal environment surrounded by quills and caffeine or something like that. How do you feel how do you react when people say that?
I was asked this once in an interview that Garth Nix and I did. We were on tour. We were in a bar in LA and we were answering questions online. And the question was, so what do you have to do? What ritual do you have to perform before you're able to write? And because we're jet lagged and had a couple of drinks, Garth said, well, I have to run around the house 3 times widdershins and Sean has to have a certain percentage of chocolate in his bloodstream. Because it's a little bit like where do you get your ideas from? It's a question that it's a perfectly valid question, but there's no real answer to it, I think. And if you get stuck on the necessary conditions, I think that just gives you an excuse not to write. Whereas because I had all those terrible deadlines, those 4 books a year kind of stuff that I think I've talked about before, you just have to write wherever you can. Yeah. So I got a real love of writing in hotel rooms and in airports and on planes, anywhere I can find a spot where I can be still for an hour. And if I've got my noise-reducing headphones on, they're the necessary conditions.
A deadline is an amazing thing, isn't it, for motivation?
Yes.
I don't think anything beats it for motivation.
Where do these ideas come from? I've become that person. Where do these romanticised ideas come from of how a writer works?
From Wordsworth and the Romantics. Literally. He's got a preface to the poems where he talks about what a poet is and that a poet is a man of special sensibility and
High on
inspiration. It's actually not true. What's hilarious about this preface is he talks about how inspiration strikes and it flows through you and you're just a special person. But you can actually find like all these drafts of that preface and of the poems in the collection that he actually might have drafted a poem 28 times, but he's pretending in this preface that it just comes to him from God and it flows through him.
I love the irony of that. That's great. It just comes to you.
Yeah.
Draft 39.
But I think there's a thing that we all feel starting out. I don't know if it goes away, but the idea that there's a secret, that there's a special secret that you'll discover at the end of the rainbow that will tell you how to do it and how to be successful. And
we'll be discussing that secret in episode 23.
Hang on.
In code.
We're building the suspense. But yeah, you feel when you start out like, if I just learn the secret, it will be okay. The secret to how to write a synopsis or a blurb or how to write, and for academics, how to write the essay, how to write the abstract, how to submit to a publisher.
How many rewrites to do.
Yeah.
How many semicolons are too many.
Yes. Do I double space? Do I use single quotation marks or double quotation? Like really finicky stuff people get obsessed over thinking it's the secret to success.
And even if you do crack something on a particular piece of work, if you break its back, what an awful image. If you break its back, that doesn't necessarily help you next time.
No,
because you're doing something different, right?
Yeah.
You only learn how to write this book as somebody once.
But the other one that has always panicked me is networking. Everyone always says, networking is the secret. It's who you know. And I find meeting people really traumatic. Like I'm quite shy. And I always think I'm best about the 10th time you meet me. That's when people like me after that. But not the first 9 times because I'm so shy. You probably don't
I
remember.
hated Amy for the first 9 times.
But
No, that's not true. We got on
I'm a little
ridiculous.
bit innocuous and I get a bit nervous and so networking terrifies me. I hate it. I'm really not, it's not my thing. So when people used to say, you have to network, you have to go to writers' conferences and network, and to me that was just like, oh God, I can't think of anything worse.
I mean, I guess...
But you don't. You just have to do your thing the way you do it.
Whatever works for you. So I think when we're talking about writing environments, when you're starting out, as with genre, style, voice, etc., you should be trying different environments. Do you think that would be fair to say? And then when one works for you, stick with it until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't, and then you change. So, I wrote one whole book at my desk in my office at home, and then next time it didn't work, so I moved to the kitchen table.
See, I can write creatively from home. When I was trying to do my PhD, that shelf of DVDs was just too much. I went, I actually can't do it. So I cut the internet off at home. I got the most boring office in this university. It was boring.
It's still boring.
No, it's different office.
Different office.
This one's exciting.
He doesn't decorate. You keep everything really plain.
The last one had a shelf with 3 books on it that someone had left there. And
How many books have you got on your shelves now?
I've got like
4.
No, I don't. I'd be up to double figures by now. But the last shelf had 3 books, one of which was The Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, which I quickly got rid of because that was too much of a distraction. It was the most boring office ever.
See, I can't do that. It makes me anxious.
That's the only way I could do the PhD, and I had to stay there from 9 till 6 every day.
Yeah, see, because I get anxious with silence, anxious being alone. So, like, if I get really anxious, and Johnny has this joke, like, if no one's home and I have to write a book, I'll put the TV on and put on, like, Escape to the Country or something dire that can just be in the background so that there's something on.
So you say dire, but Escape to the Country is engrossing.
It is. But, something you don't have to focus on that can just flicker in the background and there'll be the sound of voices and I don't feel so anxious.
Amy's anxieties are coming out.
Yeah, that's right. I find TV way too distracting. There's something too attention-getting. I can't bear to have it on in the house. It can't be anything I want
to watch. It can't be like the TV show I'm watching at the moment or anything.
No,
it has to be something like, Great British Bake Off or something you can just leave on in the background.
I find the silence very intimidating. Grand Designs, yes.
So you do too. Music, yes.
I play a lot of music,
but not music with lyrics anymore. My second novel I wrote entirely while listening to one Peter Gabriel album over and over and over and over.
I have done that before.
But I can't do that anymore.
I have an unpublished book, actually, and I've been listening to a certain band, and all the names of their songs were woven through. It started unconsciously, and then I thought it was fun.
You should check for copyright violations.
Do you wonder why that's not published?
It's just one big lyric sheet. No, I think music's a big part of it.
Has to be the right kind of music. Do you have a preferred kind of music to listen to?
Spotify does that thing where you look up one song and then it finds other songs it thinks you like. And so it's actually been really useful because I've started to develop tastes in all these different bands at the same time as I'm working on something. But none of that really gets in the way. I can have kind of Frasier on in the background or Seinfeld, something like that I've watched 100 times. Yeah. So that's fine. I have a neighbour with a Mustang. I'm going to name and shame you, Jeff. And every morning he leaves at about 8 o'clock. And it's not that you just hear it.
You feel it.
You feel it through your bones. And so all sorts of things can be going on and it doesn't. I've got a restaurant next door, found a stray cat on the roof of the all sorts of weird stuff happens. But it doesn't really, if you're in that imaginary headspace, you just get the cat down, put it in a room, feed it, keep going.
I think things do need to be a little peaceful. I've been thinking, because I've said flippantly I could write anywhere as long as it's kind of a bit private. But the bit of nature helps, I think. Like having a window where I can see green things or the weather, or that really helps me.
We mentioned nature before, and weather, and I've got this thing about storms, I think I said. I'm obsessed with storms.
I used to listen to a storm CD when I was writing a long time ago, but it made me depressed when I stopped writing for the day and switched off the CD, opened the window, and there'd be the blazing 40-degree sun and no storm, and I'd be going, oh no!
I do love this heat though.
Sean's war against the sun. He's like Monty Burns.
And when he went to Antarctica, it's eternal daylight.
It's eternal daylight.
Well, yeah, it's true. I'm a creature of contradictions, but at least it was cold. But I don't have any windows open in my study if I can avoid it, unless it's winter. Well, that's because it's upstairs and it gets really hot if I have the blinds open. So the darker the better, so I can mushroom.
I do sympathise with the students you're mentioning though, because you do wish longingly for this perfect moment that will open up and everything falls into place.
Yes. I think initially you think that will happen and then you realise you've just got to wade through what you're doing almost regardless of where you are. You can control it to a point. But, the other way of looking at it is what else is going on in your life that might be getting in the way. And you just have to say, for the next few hours, if I can, I'm going to try and, shut that out because, there might be a deadline or, you've got to organise your life and hit certain goals. So, I think...
We make writing sound so fun, don't we?
If you wait for that special moment, I think you'll always be waiting for that special moment.
But then sometimes you do get the special moment.
Very rarely,
Sometimes you're in flow and it's amazing.
And hours go by and you go... I've got a muso friend, a good friend, who is 1,000 times worse, but it's a similar process. And she used to be down in her studio in the hills and she'd say, put a cup of tea on, I'll be up in 10 minutes. And I go up... 3 hours later, she emerges. She goes, got that cup of tea ready yet? And I went, we've had 3.
Yeah, I have done that before to family and friends.
My wife does that regularly. I'm just going to finish this sentence.
Yeah, I did that too. I'll just reread this page. I once, when the kids were really little, so they would have been tiny, like 1 and 3, and I used to write after they went to bed because they still went to bed, which they don't do now.
No.
And because they're teenagers, they never go to bed. They would go to bed and I'd sit down and write until I usually tried to write from like 8 till midnight. And this one night I looked up and my ex-husband, he was coming out and I was like, oh, sorry, did I wake you up? And he's like, I'm getting ready for work. And I'd been sitting there all night. It was like 6 in the morning. I'd sat down at 8 and I just hadn't looked up. I just wrote.
Yeah.
I used to write like that. I used to write and write and write until the story was finished and it meant I had no work-life balance at all. I've got a fairly strict rule now that after dinner I can't go back up to the office. So
that's nice.
Whatever I need to have
It's good for your relationship.
It's great for your relationship. That's right. I love hanging out with my wife, Yeah. and I love getting to my desk to write as well. And maybe there's a point you cross over with your writing where I guess I was forced to get over my insecurity by having lots of deadlines and making a living from it. So I really enjoyed going up to my desk.
Yeah.
So why would I put it off, to do other stuff like paying bills or going to the shops? Or, it was the thing it still is the thing I love doing the most, although I do less of it now.
I find it hard to multitask when I'm in a book though. I don't know how you guys feel, but once it takes off and I probably have to be about a third of the way in, and it's just in my head and it's dominating my head. I really find it hard to do things like pay the bills or do other things.
And then the power's cut off and you suddenly go, oh, wait, there's something I forgot. Whoops. Do you think there's any benefit in going to work? You know, you mentioned going to the boring office, but I think Roald Dahl had a little kind of shed
He did,
just at the back of his house, and he'd go to work.
Gay Talese used to have the upstairs of his house.
And then you've
he'd
got a loft
get up
too.
and
Got a
he'd go up.
I've got a loft that doesn't have a door on it, so I go upstairs to work, but I didn't want a door because I didn't want to shut myself off from the rest of the house. I love hearing what's going on, and because somehow there's this weird acoustic trick that wasn't intended, but I can hear everything that's going on in the house. It's crazy. I can hear people right down the other end having a conversation, and so it's good. It doesn't distract me. I can just hear them, and I know what they're doing. And
I get irked with people like Roald Dahl and Gay Talese, because Gay Talese's wife used to hand him a cup of tea as he walked upstairs, and then she'd take care of the kids and do the laundry and wash everything and pay the bills. And then he'd come down and have lunch, and then he'd go back up. I was like, I want that life.
That's not great, yeah.
Except I don't think I do want that life, because I think the chaos and all the stuff, the real stuff of life, is actually what makes you a good artist. You have to love people and be in their daily life and do all the labour of life in order to have anything to write about.
Here's a saucy question. I can't even use the word saucy.
Oh,
saucy.
yeah.
Suddenly I'm chatting to my Nana Joy.
Weird to saucy.
We'll come back to Nanna Joy.
We'll come back
Dear
to
listener.
Have you ever let anyone watch you write?
I have done it live. I've always Harlan Ellison for pay. Harlan Ellison once famously set himself up in an empty shopfront window and wrote on his typewriter while people went by and watched. And I always thought that was a crazy idea, and I love the idea of doing it. So at one a Brisbane Writers' Festival, I was part of a group of writers. There were 3 of us who were paid to sit there and write in the afternoon. I think it was like 2.5 hours or something like that. I can't remember exactly how long it was, but it was utterly exhausting. And people would come up and give us writing prompts. They'd type on a typewriter and hand the pieces of paper to us, and then the prompts were put up online, and people could see us streaming.
So you had to write live. You couldn't edit.
Nope, no editing.
Wow.
And then it was published later.
You could type.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. That's right. And the typos became part of the story.
I think a lot of writers aren't good typists.
No, not at all.
Terrible
Not at all.
typists.
Yeah.
I don't do it correctly.
No, I don't know how to touch type. I just hammer away and break keyboards.
The typos became part of it. And I was writing a mad stream of consciousness. Another woman was writing poetry. I forget what everybody else was doing, but it was a really interesting experience of sort of cracking open your head and letting other people's microscopes in a way.
Because it is very exposing anyway, isn't it, to publish your work? Like, people get to learn a lot about you.
I had a friend whose mother said, "Can I watch you write?" And he kept looking up, and she'd smile at him, and eventually went, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. It's getting uncomfortable."
Or stop smiling.
Or stop smiling.
I'm okay with people in the room. I don't want to be watched.
I just stared at,
Yeah.
like a zoo animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've written with people in the room.
might
Sometimes
have
when
fun
you're on
with that.
deadline, you just have to.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I just don't want to be watched. I don't want anyone reading over my shoulder while I write, though.
My father, I'm going to name and shame various members of my family, but my father is the worst, because if you'd go down to Port Elliot and you want to do something, and the lounge room is directly next to the kind of study room, and you're in there, and Dad just puts on, Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, gets out, some chocolates, some Scotch Fingers, and he just laughs, audibly laughs, and then he goes, "Oh, son, remember we used to watch this when you were a kid?" I'm like, all right, I'm coming out.
How could you resist that?
It's very
That's
hard.
a cry for help. It's a cry for love, and how could you resist that? Oh, that's
My
wonderful.
daughter once, when she was really little, she must have been at kindy, and one day she sat down at the table and has just like set up her little fake laptop, whatever it was, those little toys. And she's like, "Don't bother me now, I'm writing." It's like, oh, I'm the worst mother in the world. She knew what she was doing.
She knew what she was doing.
She knew what she was doing.
Oh, she's a smart girl. That's hilarious. And then did she start demanding things like, "Can you keep it down? Where's my
No,
coffee?"
because I can tune out if I sit down, because I figure it's my partner's less good at this. He will plonk himself down at the kitchen table and then get grumpy if you make a noise. And I'm always like, it's the kitchen table. Like, if you're going to sit there, you have to be able to put up with noise.
I'd love to go into a coffee shop and then get that attitude going on. Like, well, you all shut up.
That's right.
Art is happening here at table 4.
The great Australian novel is being written and you're all in it as villains. We'll talk about that one day.
Yeah.
People we don't like going into our books in order to be disparaged. One of the great, most powerful things a writer can do.
Way to get sued.
But I think so. Our environments, it's a mixture of control and chaos, isn't it? I think is what we're talking about.
Ordered chaos is where we've
We
got
have to be flexible, don't you? Or you won't write. Like you have to be flexible with what happens.
Because there are millions of reasons not to write, and part of that list is the environment that will inevitably distract you.
Ideally, okay, how about this? Your ideal fantasy environment to write. Mine would be that I don't have to do any housework or cooking, which sometimes happens when I'm close to deadline, where I can look up and someone feeds me. That is my dream, that I don't need to think
intravenous drip as you're typing away.
But the idea that I don't need to stop to think, what do I need to buy at the supermarket? What do I need to cook? I would like it to be like a resort hotel where everything's taken care of and I just can focus on the book.
I find that too intense. I've been in those environments and I find them too intense. I go a bit mad.
Full rub would be good too. Let's throw in a massage maybe.
Let's throw those in. I've never had those. But when I was 20 years working at home as a full-time writer, and I very eventually worked out that what I like is certain types of housework. I love cooking. I look forward to cooking in the evening.
I like it except on deadline.
Even around deadlines, I find stepping away from my work really helpful. And as we talked about, and I think the first episode, doing mundane tasks helps sort of stimulate your creativity. Yeah. I love washing clothes, doing the clothes washing, because I can be really anal about it, which appeals to me. But also it's something you can start going, walk away 2 hours later, and then come back and finish it, and it's done. So you get a feeling of accomplishment for not much work.
Yes, I've accomplished something for the day. I have that, unfortunately, with DVD box sets. I get to the end of Twin Peaks and go, I have watched all of that. That is now, I have achieved Breaking Bad.
Well, that was an achievement because that was grueling.
That was quite long.
It was more the emotional tension. Like by the end, I felt like I'd been through the ringer with Breaking Bad.
There you go. So then you go, I have done. No, you haven't written anything constructive, but you've still achieved, and that is the main thing.
But I quite like the household chores, a modicum of household chores. But there's certain things I don't.
I feel like I've spent all week. I spend all weekend doing laundry.
Laundry's. I hate dusting. I hate dusting
too.
Dusting's like Sisyphus. You just as you're dusting,
it's not what I heard,
dust is
but
coming.
I know what you mean. So, what are our goals for the next week? I think it's time for us to wrap up. So, I've got some washing to do. You want to go swimming?
Yeah, I'm going to go swimming in the next couple of days. I have to get some book proposals. I've got to write a sample chapter, is what I have to do, and 2 book proposals.
Great.
Oh, I've got a play to finish.
Just
do
a
that.
Play.
Yes. Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah. I have odd jobs to do. The little things that get left over.
Yeah.
And some marking. Grading, not time dependent marking. Yeah. I don't want to sound like the lazy academic, but a couple of things to read over. Nothing dramatic, no new novels, no editing. I got all the editing done that I needed to get done last time we talked.
Yay!
Hooray! It's always a good feeling. Well, it's been a fascinating conversation as always. Thank you very much, Alex and Amy. Next week we'll talk about something completely different. Who knows what that will be? We'll decide between now and then. Immense gratitude to Tom Young, our producer.
Thanks, Tom.
We love you, Tom.
We love you, Tom. Thanks to our heretofore unnamed music collaborator, the not very famous Bob Roberts. The dear old Bob Roberts, who wrote the original version of our theme tune, which was called Why Don't You Write When You Don't Need Money? Honey, that's right. Which has been drastically mutated by me in order to create a theme tune. So apologies to the ghost of Bob Roberts.
Sorry, Bob.
Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Why don't you write when you don't need money? All your notes sound alike too much. All of them start with I love you, honey, but they end with the same old touch. Just for a change, send a nice loving letter and cut out that please remit. Why don't you write when you don't need money, honey? That would certainly make a hit.
There was one day I was digging some ice out with a bunch of guys, and the guy said, "Look at that shovel carefully. What do you notice about it?" And I said, "It's been repaired. It's been the thing had broken off, and they welded it shut." And he said, "Now, where else in the world would you see a repaired shovel? Because normally you just chuck it out and buy a new one. Can't do that here. There's not a Mitre 10 down the corner. They have to ship it down at great expense. So they fixed it."
This does not sound like my fantasy writing retreat.
Wonderful. I loved it.
I want the massage.
But there are discos. There's a gym. There's all sorts of stuff. Are we rolling?